Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into Claritas and their AI-powered marketing suite. They say they can personalize the entire customer journey, but in a way that respects your privacy. So, by the end of this deep dive, you'll know how they're using AI to, well, kind of change the game.
What I find really interesting here is that Claritas isn't just offering another marketing tool. They're really aiming to completely change the customer experience, start to finish.
And they're doing this with a thing called an identity graph, which sounds very high-tech.
It is, but think of it this way. It's like a giant puzzle where each piece represents a little bit of information about a customer. So Claritas connects those pieces to create a complete picture of each person. But, and this is important, without using personally identifiable information. So that means things like your name or your address. They don't use those.
Okay, so they're building this puzzle to target their marketing better, but how's that different from what other companies are doing?
Well, Claritas says that what makes their approach unique is that they're not just targeting like groups of people. They're actually personalizing messages for each individual person. They call it AI personalization, and it's one of their 4 key pillars.
So it's more than just sending the right message to the right people. It's about making the message itself just for that person.
Exactly, and they're doing this using unsupervised learning. So imagine you have a room full of pieces of a puzzle, but there's no picture on the box to help you. So that's basically what the AI is doing. It's going through massive amounts of data, figuring out patterns and connections by itself.
Okay, so the AI is finding these hidden connections to make messages just for one person. But what kind of patterns are we talking about?
Think about things you do online. You might visit a website about travel, then search for hiking boots, and then later you might check out a recipe for trail mix. The AI can look at all this data and decide that you're interested in hiking, even though you never actually said so.
So it's like the AI is like a digital detective, figuring out our interests based on what we do online.
Yeah, exactly. And this means they can tailor messages so they're actually relevant and engaging, but without needing to track people or use personal data. So they can say something like, looking for the perfect hiking boots, instead of just a generic, check out our shoes sale.
That makes sense. But how does this personalization actually work? The internet is a pretty big place with a lot of different ways to reach people.
That's where AI media optimization comes in. It's another one of those 4 pillars we mentioned. You can kind of think of it like a chess game where each move is a different marketing channel.
So instead of sending the same message everywhere, they're strategically putting their messages on the channels where they'll actually reach the right people.
Exactly. And the AI is constantly looking at data to decide which channels are most effective for each message and audience. So, for example, it might say to use shorter video clips on social media, but longer, more detailed videos on platforms where people will actually watch them.
That makes a lot of sense. But it all still feels a bit theoretical, Do they actually have proof that this approach works?
They say they've gotten some pretty impressive results. For example, they say they've achieved 149% lift in conversions with AI personalization. So that means they're almost tripling the number of people actually doing what they want them to do, like buying a product or signing up for something.
Okay, now those are some numbers I understand. But all this talk about AI and personalization can be kind of creepy, especially with all the data privacy problems we see.
That's a fair point. But this is where Claritas tries to be different. They say they're doing all this personalization without relying on cookies or personally identifiable information, PII.
Wait, hold on. How's that even possible? It sounds like magic.
No, it's not magic, but it's definitely clever. Remember that identity graph we talked about? They're using that to figure out your interests without actually needing your name, your address, or any other personal stuff.
So it's like they have a code that represents me, but it doesn't say who I am?
Yeah, exactly. And they make this code by watching how you act online. The websites you go to, what you search for, what kind of content you interact with.
So they're using those digital breadcrumbs to make a personalized experience without actually collecting my data.
Right. And they also use things like contextual personalization and hierarchical message assembly. This just makes sure the messages you see are relevant to you without needing your personal information.
Okay, that makes me feel better about the privacy thing. It sounds like they're trying to do personalization the right way.
Yeah, that's the sense I get from their materials. They're really emphasizing how committed they are to privacy.
That's good to hear. But I'm now kind of curious about the technical side of things. How are they building these messages for each person in real time? It seems like it would need a lot of computing power.
Well, yeah, it definitely does. But that's actually something we're going to cover in part 2 of this deep dive. where we explore the more technical stuff behind Claritas's AI engine.
All right, I'm hooked already. We've talked about a lot, but I feel like we've just scratched the surface. I'm ready to dive deeper into the technical details and see how it all works in the real world.
I'm excited to unpack it all with you. Stay tuned because things are about to get really interesting. Welcome back. Last time, we were talking about how Claritas is using AI to personalize marketing, but, in a way that's supposed to respect your privacy.
Sure.
So now, let's kind of peel back the layers and look at how the tech actually works. Remember those 4 pillars. Today, we're going to talk about AI media optimization and AI-driven measurement and attribution.
Okay, let's start with the first one, AI media optimization. It sounds like they're saying they've, cracked the code on the perfect mix of marketing channels. But doesn't that change all the time?
Yeah, you're right. The marketing world is always changing. But what Claritas is doing is using AI to keep up with those changes. So their AI looks at how audiences respond and how messages perform across, well, pretty much every channel you can think of.
So they're not just following trends, they're using data to decide which channels work best for different messages and audiences.
Exactly. Think of it like this. You wouldn't use a megaphone to whisper a secret, right? You'd choose the right way to communicate for that message. Claritas AI does the same thing, but for marketing.
That's a great analogy. But how does the AI actually know which channels are best?
It's all about data analysis and something called machine learning. Basically, the AI is always gathering data on how people interact with messages on different channels. It looks at things like click-through rates, conversion rates, how much people are engaging, and even how people feel about the messages.
So it's not just about how many people see a message, it's about how they react to it. Like if people are just ignoring your ads, the AI will figure that out.
Yeah, exactly. And it uses all that data to really understand how different channels and messages work for different types of people. Then it can tell marketers where they should focus their efforts.
That makes sense. It's like having your own marketing advisor, but one who's constantly crunching numbers and telling you where to spend your money.
Exactly. And the great thing about AI is that it can do this on a scale that humans just can't. It can look at millions of data points instantly, giving marketers insights they could never get on their own.
That's pretty incredible. But let's move on to the last pillar, AI-driven measurement and attribution. I gotta admit, this one sounds a bit, technical and maybe even a little boring.
I get why you might think that, but trust me, this is where things get really interesting. Remember, AI is all about finding patterns and making predictions. And in marketing, one of the biggest challenges is figuring out what's actually working.
You mean like if someone sees your ad and then buys your product a month later, how do you know if it was the ad that convinced them?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. And traditionally, it's been really hard to answer, but Claritas is trying to use AI to solve this mystery.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does AI make measuring marketing effectiveness easier?
Well, think about it like this. You wouldn't judge how well a garden is doing by just looking at one flower, right? You'd look at the whole thing. It's the same with marketing. Claritas AI looks at the whole customer journey, not just individual interactions.
So instead of just giving credit to the last thing someone clicked before buying, it can analyze everything a person did with a brand across all channels and see what really influenced them.
Exactly. It's like having a detective who can put together all the clues and tell you how each marketing effort contributed to the end result.
That's super valuable.
Yeah.
But how does the AI actually do this? What data is it using?
It looks at everything: website visits, ad impressions, email opens, social media engagement, even things like purchases made in physical stores. It's building a complete picture of how people interact with a brand. And then it uses some pretty complex algorithms to figure out which interactions were the most important.
So instead of just looking at data in separate pieces, it's connecting everything to see the big picture.
Yeah. And that's where AI really excels. Humans just can't handle the huge amount of data involved in marketing these days. But AI can, and that gives marketers insights that they just wouldn't have otherwise.
This is starting to sound like a dream come true for marketers. Personalized messages delivered at the right time through the right channels, and then being able to see exactly what's working.
It's definitely a powerful idea. And Claritas thinks AI is the key to making it happen.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. But before we get too carried away, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Privacy. You said earlier that they're doing all of this without using cookies or personal information. Can you explain that a bit more?
Absolutely. Privacy is a big deal these days, and Claritas seems to be taking it seriously. They say they can do all this personalization without ever knowing your name, address, or anything else that could identify you.
But wait, how is that possible? If they're not tracking me, how can they personalize things for me?
Remember that identity graph we talked about? It's kind of like a digital fingerprint that's unique to you, but it doesn't have any of your actual personal information.
So it's like a code that represents me, but it doesn't reveal who I am.
Exactly. And they build this code by looking at your online behavior, things like the websites you visit, the stuff you search for, the content you engage with.
So they're using my online activity to create a personalized experience, but without collecting my actual data.
Exactly. They also use techniques like contextual personalization and hierarchical message assembly. This just makes sure the messages you see are relevant to your interests, but without needing your personal information.
Okay, that makes me feel a lot better about the privacy side of things. It sounds like they're really trying to find that sweet spot between personalization and privacy.
That's definitely the impression I get from their marketing. They
Yeah.
really emphasize their commitment to privacy.
Well, that's good to hear, but now I'm curious about the practical side of things. How are businesses actually using these tools? Do they have any real-world examples?
They do. They mention a few in their materials, but they're a bit vague on the details.
Okay, well, let's hear them anyway. I love a good success story.
One example involves a retail company that was struggling to get people to buy stuff online. They started using Claritas, and they saw a 149% increase in conversions. That's almost triple the number of people making purchases.
Wow. But what do they actually do?
They use the AI personalization tools to tailor the website experience to different types of customers. They showed them products they were more likely to buy and content they were more likely to be interested in.
So it wasn't about sending the same message to everyone. It was about making the experience personal.
Exactly.
Right.
And because they were being careful about privacy, they didn't need to use intrusive tracking or personal data to do it.
That's pretty impressive. Do they have any other examples?
Yeah. They mentioned another one with a financial services company that wanted more leads for their investment products. They started using Claritas, and they got 136% more people submitting their information.
That's a lot of potential new customers. How did they manage that?
They used the AI personalization tools to create targeted emails that were specific to each customer's interests and goals. They also used the dynamic audience optimization tool to refine their targeting for social media ads.
So again, it was all about using AI to get the right message to the right people at the right time.
Exactly. And the results are pretty clear.
It all sounds very encouraging. But I'm curious to know more about the companies using these tools. Are there certain industries that are seeing the most success?
Unfortunately, their marketing materials don't really give a lot of specifics about companies or industries. It would be great to see more detailed examples to understand how different businesses are using the platform.
I agree. But even without all the details, it's clear that Claritas is making some pretty bold claims about how AI can change marketing.
Absolutely. They're basically saying that AI is the key to a more personalized, effective, and privacy-focused future for marketing.
Okay, I'm almost convinced. But I know you're going to bring me back down to earth with some skepticism. What are the potential downsides or challenges here?
You know me too well. The potential is exciting, but it's important to be realistic about the possible pitfalls. One concern that comes up a lot is the potential for bias in AI algorithms.
Okay, can you explain that a bit? How could AI be biased?
Well, AI algorithms are only as good as the data they learn from. So if the data itself is biased, the AI will be biased too.
So if a company uses biased data to train their AI, it could continue those biases in its marketing.
Exactly. For example, if a company mostly markets its products to men, the AI might start to think that certain products are only for men and unintentionally exclude women from seeing ads for them. Or it might make assumptions about people based on their demographics, which could lead to inaccurate or even offensive targeting.
That's a valid concern. It sounds like it's really important for companies using AI to be careful about the data they use and make sure it represents everyone they're trying to reach.
Absolutely. They also need to have ways to detect and fix bias in their algorithms.
That makes sense. What other potential downsides should we be thinking about?
Another concern is becoming too reliant on technology. AI can be a powerful tool, but it shouldn't replace human creativity and decision-making.
So you're saying marketers shouldn't just blindly trust the AI to make all the decisions.
Right. AI should be a partner, not a replacement. Marketers still need to understand their audience, create good messages, and make smart choices about their campaigns.
It sounds like it's all about finding the right balance between human expertise and AI support. What other challenges are out there?
Well, AI marketing platforms can be very complex and need special expertise to use them effectively.
So not every business might have the resources or skills to use these tools well.
That's true. It's likely that bigger businesses with more resources will be the first to use this technology. But as AI gets easier to use and more affordable, we might see solutions that work for smaller businesses too.
That would be great. It would give everyone a chance to benefit from AI-powered marketing.
Absolutely. But it's important to remember that AI is still pretty new, and we're just starting to figure out what it means for marketing and society in general.
So it's a journey with both exciting possibilities and potential problems along the way. But it seems like Claritas is trying to do it the right way, with a focus on privacy and ethics.
That's definitely the message I get from them. And it's a message I can get behind. I'm cautiously optimistic about the future of AI in marketing. I think it has the potential to make marketing more personalized, effective, and even enjoyable for consumers, as long as it's developed and used responsibly.
I agree. It's an exciting time to be watching this unfold. But before we wrap up, I have one more question. What are they actually doing to address these concerns about bias and over-reliance on technology? Are they just talking the talk, or are they actually taking action?
That's a great question, and one we need to dig into further. Let's shift gears in part 3 of our deep dive and look into how Claritas is addressing those concerns.
I'm ready. Let's see if they're really putting their money where their mouth is. Okay, so we've spent a lot of time talking about Claritas and their AI-powered marketing. We looked at their vision of personalized marketing that's also supposed to be privacy-focused. We even dove into some of the potential good stuff and the potential bad stuff that could come from this tech. But now I think it's time to get to the heart of the matter. Are they really doing what they say they are when it comes to those ethical concerns we brought up?
Yeah, that's the real question, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to talk a big game, but it's another thing entirely to actually walk the walk. So let's look at what Claritas is actually doing to stop bias in their AI and to make sure people aren't relying on technology too much.
Tell me they're not just saying the right things without actually doing anything.
Well, in their marketing materials, they do highlight a few key things they're working on. One of the first things they talk about is data diversity.
So they understand that the data used to train AI has a huge impact on how it makes decisions.
Exactly. They say they're actively working to make sure the data they use represents all sorts of people. That means including data from people of all genders, ages, races, ethnicities, you name it.
Makes sense. If you want your AI to be fair, you need to teach it with data that reflects the real world.
Right. And they're not just talking about gathering more diverse data. They're also talking about ways to fix bias that might already be in the algorithms.
Okay, this is where I start to get lost. Can you explain that a little simpler?
Okay, think of it this way. Imagine you're teaching a kid to ride a bike. If you hold on to the handlebars the whole time, they'll never learn to balance on their own. AI is kind of similar. If you're always correcting its decisions, it'll never learn to think for itself.
Ah, I see. So they're letting the AI make some decisions, but they're also putting up guardrails so it doesn't go too far off track.
Exactly. They're using things like regularization and fairness constraints to kind of nudge the AI to make better choices.
Okay, that's starting to make sense, but how do they actually know if these things are working?
They talk about doing lots of testing and validation. They say they're constantly watching how their AI performs to see if there's any bias, and they adjust things as they go.
So it's an ongoing process of watching, checking, and tweaking.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where human oversight is really important. They emphasize that they have teams of data scientists and people who focus on ethics, who are in charge of watching over how the AI is developed and used.
So they're not just letting the robots run wild, they're actual people making sure the AI is being used in a good way.
Right, and that's crucial. AI is a tool to help humans, not replace them. That's why Claritas talks about the importance of humans and AI working together.
So they see a future where marketers and AI team up to create better and more ethical campaigns.
Exactly. They think this kind of teamwork is how we'll unlock the true power of AI while also minimizing the risks.
It all sounds pretty good. But I gotta ask, are they being open about all of this? Are they sharing their findings and how they do things with the public?
That's a good question. Honestly, I think that's something they could do a better job of. Being transparent is super important if you want to build trust.
So we need more than just vague promises. We need to see real proof of how they're tackling these issues.
Definitely. They need to be open about what they're doing, the challenges they face, and what they're learning along the way. They need to have real conversations with consumers, ethicists, regulators, everyone who's involved.
Seems like they have a lot of work to do to win over skeptics like me. But, I do have to say, I'm a little bit optimistic. Their vision for personalized marketing that also respects privacy is a good one. And if they can really do what they say they're going to do, it could change the world of advertising for the better.
I agree. This is a really interesting time for this whole area. AI is changing so fast, and we're just beginning to see what it can do, both the good and the bad.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the world of Claritas and AI-driven marketing. We've talked about their ideas, their technology, and how they're trying to deal with the ethical stuff around AI. We've also brought up some important questions that we'll all be thinking about as AI becomes a bigger part of our lives.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. We hope it gave you some new insights and made you think about some important things.
As always, we encourage you to keep learning about these things. The future of AI is still being shaped, and it's up to all of us to make sure it turns out well.
Stay curious, stay informed, and keep the conversation going.
Until next time, keep diving deep.